right, so the Albany Plan of Union. So the French and Indian War has broken out. The British are at war against the French. Both have Native American allies. And so, what are the colonies planning to do about it? Because fighting is literally in their backyard on the western side of the Allegheny and Appalachian Mountains, and of course, up near Canada. So, how do they plan to deal with it? So, Ben Franklin comes up with this plan. And really, the biggest reason I bring this up is because this will be a similar idea that we use for the Continental Congress during the American Revolutionary War. Ben Franklin, definitely an Enlightenment thinker for the American colonies. He is a huge politician. He will be an ambassador to France during the American Revolutionary War. He's definitely a mover and shaker of his time. Did not fight in the military, but came up with inventions in Poor Richard's Almanac and all that stuff that you've already learned about, hopefully. So the Albany Plan of Union is this idea. Obviously, it's established in New York, Albany, New York. And the idea was we need to seek an alliance with a strong Native American tribe, hopefully the Iroquois, and we need to set up a way to defend ourselves because we can't just rely on the British over in Great Britain and Europe sending over military to protect us. So what can we do to protect ourselves? And so he wanted to unite the colonies. And at this time, they're definitely separated with their different ideas. Even though they are run by Great Britain, they all kind of follow their own different rules. So the Albany Plan consisted of a few things. They wanted a legislature that would help govern the colonies during the French and Indian War. They would collect taxes, raise troops, and regulate trade. This would go towards the war effort. So any of the fighting, guns, men that they needed to pay, they would collect taxes to pay these men to help fight the French and Indian War on behalf of them. Not everybody was involved. Not everybody wanted to get involved in the Albany Plan of Union. Some of the colonies are removed from the fighting, so it's not really in the forefront of their mind. So the Albany Plan of Union does not get passed, but like I said, the important thing is this will be brought up again for the American Revolutionary War. That'll happen in about 24 years. All right, so key figures of the war. Two figures I'm going to talk about are both British figures. We have first of all, we have George Washington, who helped start the war, the young 21, 22-year-old George Washington. But who does the British send over to take control of the fighting? They send their number one general, Edward Braddock, to the British colonies to fight the French. Remember, he is a seasoned veteran. He has been fighting in Europe his entire life. He is familiar with the gentleman's warfare. Some say that he actually felt when he left Great Britain he would never return. He had kind of a premonition that this was it for him. He goes to the Americas. He goes to the British colonies and starts to devise a plan. His plan is to march to Fort Duquesne with a large army, cannon, all the supplies through the wilderness, and attack the French fort, which is Fort Duquesne. He actually has George Washington on his side, and he's kind of using him as an aide. And George Washington does advise him that, just beware of the type of fighting. So as they are marching, they cover, I forget what it is, something like 21 miles in the first week or 3 weeks, because they literally have to cut down trees as they are marching to get the cannons and other supplies through. So it's a single track or a smaller, at least even just a double track, where he's trying to move all of his military men through there. It's dense forest on the way to Fort Duquesne. But they eventually get very close. Unfortunately, they are going to be ambushed before they can reach Fort Duquesne. Native American and French are going to line up on either side of them and basically rain down fire, weapons, arrows, things like that, and attack the British. The British are going to panic, try to retreat, but since there's not a lot of movement, a lot of way to retreat, they kind of get bunched up. So General Braddock is actually killed in this, and so this is his first and only fighting of the French and Indian War. And George Washington takes command and is actually able to survive this ambush by the French and Native Americans. It's said that I think 3 horses were shot out from underneath George Washington. There was a bullet hole in his hat. So he was very close to death once again. So 2 times the French could have changed the course of America, at least George Washington's life, and they have not. So Braddock, the number one guy they thought was going to come in, kick the French's butt, and move on, he is dead now. Well, how are the British going to be able to win the war? According to the British Prime Minister at the time, William Pitt, you can imagine that Pittsburgh is probably named after him, He decides how you win a war is you throw money at the problem. You need soldiers and you don't have enough, you hire mercenaries. Mercenaries are hired soldiers. So he hires a lot of German soldiers, or German mercenaries, sometimes called Hessians, and they are sent over to fight for the British. He decides to supply all of the weapons that they could possibly need. He actually uses the Navy. All of these things cost money. The reason we talk about him is because he actually has to charge a lot of taxes, and taxes will be raised in order to support the war effort. He is successful with using this tactic because they do overwhelm and out money the French eventually. So the British do win this, and it's in part because William Pitt decides money is not an issue. We will spend what we need in order to win the war. Unfortunately for the American colonists, they will have to pay some of the taxes to help pay off this debt, and then that's one of the reasons why they get a little upset. So really quickly, the Battle of Quebec. I'm going to talk about two of them, Battle of Quebec and Battle of Montreal. There were many other battles, but I'm only giving you the British victory. So this is the one where James Wolfe, the British general, finds an old path. Quebec is a fort, and so he has to try to go up and attack the fort, has to figure out how to get up there, sees that women are coming down to get water and do laundry, and they're using an old goat path. So he's able to use that old path to go and surprise attack Quebec. And unfortunately, he dies in this battle, but it's a huge victory. Many battles are based on the idea of capture the flag, and the flag would be the capital of that territory or country. When he wins at Quebec, even though he dies, they capture the French capital in the New World, in North America. And that's a signal that the war will probably be over fairly soon. And then, of course, the Battle of Montreal was the last battle fought within the American colonies, and the fighting will end after this point. And that's General Amherst, the British general who captures that city. So we've captured two major cities in Canada, Quebec and Montreal, by 1760. It's going to take a while for the peace treaty of 1763 to be written. That's like any other peace treaty. It's not like they come up with these ideas in a day and agree on it in a day. So there's going to be a lot of discussion back and forth over who gets what. In the end, the Treaty of Paris of 1763, because side note, there is a Treaty of Paris that ends the American Revolutionary War too, but this is the one we're talking about right now. The Treaty of Paris, 1763, ends the fighting in the New World. This is why they speak English in Canada, because the French, who originally controlled Canada, have to give up that land, and it is now under British control. So that is why you sometimes hear French in Canada and sometimes hear English. Well, a lot of times hear English in Canada. In Spain, even though we didn't really talk about them, they have to give up Florida. This is actually not when the British get a lot of Florida. They'll get it through a few through a few different treaties. The Albany Treaty being one of them, which we'll talk about later in the 1800s. So what happens after the French and Indian War? The Native Americans who fought alongside the French, well, they fought on the losing side, so they are unfortunately not in a very good position. We're going to stop here.